floor is yours. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah. If I'm not talking very loudly, tell me. So this guy on the left, we didn't update the haircuts, but normally we do. But that's me, and Michael here with the glasses. He's an animation filmmaker, and I'm a person more coming from the game side of things, and we're working together since some time. And the thing we want to talk about in general, by showing what we do, is interactive animation. And it's a bit the way how we combine these two things. So we work in interaction, but we also work in animation. And at the end, we don't want to call it games or films, but I think this is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and these are like the two projects that we closely collaborated on. Plug and Play first was like a short film I completed in 2013. We then worked together making it into interactive animation that then was like an app for iOS, and you could download it on Steam, which is like a platform to download games for PC and Mac. And since the release of Plug and Play, we have been working on the follow-up, which we call Kids. Kids is going to be like a short film as well as a game or an interactive animation, and also we made a concept for an exhibition that we already showed at some places. So for everyone who is not familiar with Plug and Play, that's how the characters look like, and just gonna show you a short like cut of some gameplay of the interactive version, so you have like an impression of how the interaction worked and how it kind of feels and looks like.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
So that was like a maybe 10-15 minutes interactive experience that you could download and play. It's of course still available if you're interested. The follow-up project is called Kids. That's how the universe there looks like. It even has fewer elements than Plug and Play. It's just this one character and a whole, basically. And it's all about like how they act and react on each other. It's not about the individual characteristics of a person, but like what happens if they're all equal. And just before we go a bit deeper into why we started, or why I especially started to go more into the interactive direction as well, not making just animated films, just like short recap on where we come from. Like I studied animation, 2D animation was more my focus, so I made this kind of minimalistic 2D hand-drawn animated films. The first one I sent to festivals was called Not About Us, which I made in Estonia during an exchange. classical on paper, and for Plug and Play I moved to working fully digital. I only like worked on my laptop. I didn't use anything else than my finger and my laptop. And yeah, that's kind of where I was when I met Mario.
Me, I'm more, as I said, from the games. Before working with Michael, I worked on various smaller and bigger projects. It was often like simple interactive games with various ways of like making it interesting to play, like from multiplayer to single player, more explorative games. And I really like the range what you can do. And when Michael asked me to work with him on a project, I thought it's really interesting to work on something like based on animation.
Yeah, that looks weird. So we just, like there's always these questions, yeah, well, what do you do now? And this is where we came up with this term. It's kind of a weird term for some people, but when you talk about games, people usually have like a preconception of what a game is, and it's hard to persuade them that it can be different things. And that's why we often refer to what we do as interactive animation, because there's animation inside, which I'm happy for. And yeah, interactive. I mean, you can argue that even animation is interactive in a cinema, because you have to have an interpretation of it, which is also something interactive. Yeah, and the story, why I was interested in working also not only on the linear form of a film. I mean, of course, I was interested in like showing stuff on the web. So I also had a website that was kind of interactive, and I tried to make it a little bit playful. But what happened is I put my first short that was shown at festivals online. And it was the first time that I had like a bigger audience for one of my works, when it was on Vimeo, for example. And what you quickly discover is, I mean, people don't really watch movies online. So the first line here represents the how people watch my film, the most of them. So like 2-3 seconds maybe. And when you're lucky, they jump somewhere towards the end and see if it's worth to see the thing in between. Or they're like, the second line is like someone who is very committed. But towards the end, nah. And the third line is just someone, I don't know, having a few tabs open and getting messages from someone very important. That's also how I watch movies online, and I think most of you do. So I thought about, yeah, why not make them click and have to click through your experience, and not only click play. So get their attention and asking for the attention of the audience. And this is what you do in an interactive project, or in a game, or whatever it is you want to call it. And this is I think that was like one of the first drawings where I tried to make sense how that could work. Like, I had really no idea. This is what I want to show with that picture, that I had no idea. And it was clear to me that I have to find someone who is familiar with code, with a way how to design something for an interactive format. And that's how I found Mario, by talking to several people. He was recommended to me a few times, and we decided to go drink a coffee together. And what kind of made it easy for us to connect in the beginning was that we both had some projects like that we had seen before that we liked, and we both considered them our favorites at the same time. So that was like an indication that it would work working together. And here are some of the examples of these projects. I highly recommend checking them out if you don't know them. One is called Blah Blah, which is also co-produced with the NFP by Vincent Morizet. He's a Canadian artist from Montreal. He's coming more from the film side, but he did interactive stuff early on, like interactive video clips, for example, for Arcade Fire. He's known for his work with Arcade Fire, for example. And just so you have an impression of how his work looks like.
This was on the web, it was a Flash website.
Who knows the project? Only the Canadians, right? I think not sure.
It was written at the beginning, 12 maybe.
12. Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
And I was also very surprised to find this because nobody in games knows this project.
Yeah, and like Blah Blah is also, I mean, he's using animation in a very like distinctive way, which I liked, which you rarely see in like interactive things, that animation really takes an important role. And another of these artists that kind of nails that the animation aspect of games, I think, or of something interactive is called Patrick Smith. He's a painter originally, taught himself to code. And he was also known for some Flash games that were found online at the time, like 2008 or something. It was like his first piece that I saw. So quite early, and he, like the game we both referred to when we met was Windowsill, which is also a Flash game that was also ported to the iPad. And what is very important in his game is how it feels to touch something. So it has something very tactile, and he plays with physics.
And also at the time it was really something very new for this Flash community. Like there were a lot of maybe aesthetically not so interesting Flash films. And he did really something new at the time, as well as Vincent too. We also agreed when we were talking about what to do with Plug and Play, what we didn't want to do. Because often, like, I don't know, maybe he can explain it better, what happens when you talk to games people.
Yeah, I met a lot of game designers. I went to schools where they teach game design, and what often appeared to happen was that like they wanted to do adventure games, or they wanted to do this kind of games or that kind of games, and then it would have been quite clear what kind of mechanic we have to apply to Plug and Play, to that project I already had, to this film. And for me that just didn't really was what I was looking for. I wanted to have someone that would experiment with what there was, and to find really a language that fits the film. So I didn't want to have quests in an adventure game where you have to walk from one room to the other and collect stuff or something like that. And this was like the ideas that I got, or like platformers where you have to jump from the left to the right and so on. Yeah, and Mario, with Mario was quite clear from the beginning that it would be like an effort in the beginning just to figure out what kind of interactions work with that project. So the first thing we did, okay, that comes later actually. First we talk about our tools, like what we bring into the project. I mean, I did all the animations. Mario is mainly working on lines of code.
Yeah, it's also always good to explain it. Like my tool is mostly working with code, but I wouldn't say I'm only a coder, because a lot of things when we work together are also designing how the interaction works, designing how it feels to interact, also doing the game design itself. And I think it's really like, when you're animating, you're also not just animating. You think about how it fits into the film and so on. So I think it's a good way to extend this a bit.
So yeah, my tool in animation was pen and paper in the beginning. So that was my first film. That was my second film. That was plug and play, made on this laptop. And this was kind of then the material we worked with when we started working on plug and play. So I tried to render out all the animations I had done in the smallest pieces possible. So like this, I don't know how they're called, like takes maybe, I don't know. And have like a system how to name them and how then later connect them. And a very first prototype then that we had looked like this. So you could touch this character and give him a direction and he would run. And this all looks quite okay because I think it's me playing, so I know what to do. But we figured out quite quickly when you give this to someone else, it's kind of just hard to figure out what you can do with this character. And the reason is, or one of the reasons is that animation responds quite slowly on input. So there's always like some milliseconds of delay, and this you already notice. So for us, it was very important to have something that just feels good and that you could immediately learn how to interact with. And we came to kind of a solution for that through my finger obsession at the time. I just had done this trailer for a festival with a finger. And Fantosh also asked me to make a trailer for the festival. So more fingers. And Fantosh also asked us to, I mean, actually I more proposed it. What if there would be like an interactive version of this Fantosh trailer? So we had this small app that was also online where you could pull fingers out of holes and push them in other ones in order to write out Fantosh. And this worked really well. Like everybody understood what to do because it's basically physics.
So that's how it looked behind the scenes. So instead of like using this animation like we did with the plug and play existing animations from the film, we really used just like puppets of these fingers and tried to do something that is very well reacting to what you do. So you can directly control where to go. But at the same time, there is still some force stopping you from doing anything. So at the end, it's really like this tactile feeling of having an object that it can move around, that it interacts with walls, that feels very nice. And that was exactly what we were missing with the other approach of having the frame-by-frame animation and trying to make it interactive. So at the end, we really took the same approach also in Plug and Play, because there were also similar scenes with these hands. So we built puppets out of them. And the other approach of frame-by-frame animation still had some advantages in some situations, like a walking character. You can't do it well with a puppet like that, or it will just not move nicely. And there is also the statics are a bit different, but we knew that we could also maybe combine these two approaches, which looked like that. So we had, for example, scenes where we mixed the frame-by-frame animation of the walking characters here with physics-based upper bodies that react directly to what you do. And this is like how we found a way to make it more interactive, but still keep the quality of the original animation.
Yeah, and as Yuri told before, like with interactive stuff, it's hard to make cuts or to make them feel natural and not because you need to have the feeling that you are triggering the cut. The cut is not triggered for you. So for us, that was kind of missing at the point working on the project, and we had this idea to kind of have this system where you connect things together, and every time you have a switch in current, there would be a cut, for example, and this worked quite well.
So at the end, we also had these cable scenes which didn't exist exactly like this in the film, and we used them mainly to connect all the other scenes, so we didn't have to randomly change between the scenes without a reason. And so now we always had a kind of a reason, so you can take as long as you want, but as soon as you plug in or out or press a button, something will happen, and you know that, or you expect that something will happen. And sometimes it's a cut, sometimes it's something else.
So that's a bit the technical background of how Plug and Play came together. And with kids, when we started working on it, it was quite clear that we have totally different challenges with that project. And to kind of show you how the game works, we will now give you a live demo of the game. Who has played it already? Yeah. So what you have played is not the final version, of course. And this is the same version you have played. And I try to switch to... doesn't show. So of course we have now some technical problems.
We thought we set it up before and let it running, but it doesn't work. Just quickly about the state. This is now an unfinished version of the game, but it already shows how it will be.
I think that's exactly the spot where I closed the demo on the opening night. What limitation you talk of?
It's repeating and there's timing at the end. I mean, like if you, in this case, for example, as long as you swim in one direction, it will count, and if you swim long enough in this direction, for example.
It's not that complicated.
And generally in the game there is no space, like there's no defined end of anything. So you can't go from point 1 to point B. It's a bit undefined.
Okay, I think we stop here.
Yeah, and that's a bit the base material we have in kits. So now, in this case, we really have just basically this one character that can do everything they all can do. And now in this case, we had like, instead of just playing the animation like in plug and play or using a physics simulation to do that, to actually move around the images, we used a different system. So in this case, we animated the characters directly, like frame by frame, but at the same time, it is simulated where they go. So there is, in this picture, you see this red circle that is basically the point where they really are. And you can push them around. So the goal of this was that while you could animate the character like that directly to move it from place to place, we needed something very interactive, so we can make it react on certain forces. So if you collide with a character, he will move away, and not just we don't know where they will go. That's why it's some kind of hybrid system.
So we decided to animate the character only on these 5 axes. And 3 we copied, of course. We just flipped them over and mirrored them. So they're like, there's a run cycle, there's a walk cycle, there's like basically all the animations that go in a direction, the locomotive animations, they are animated on this grid that has to be consistent. And so the animation is just simple 2D on this grid. And I was asked recently what is the difference between making animation like for something interactive than for just a film, and the answer is quite simple. It's more complicated. Yeah, and it's like as complicated as you choose. And so this is kind of what the character can do in movement. Of course, this is not the actions he can execute, if you like, but like it's really broken down in each step, and all these actions that you can see here, they have to be able to, he has to be able to do them in like these 8 directions. So it's mainly like, practically, it's about naming all the frames correctly, and when you have just a linear image sequence for making a film that's rather simple and you can go very messy, and it still works when you put everything together. And in a game, everything is kind of an organic system, and everything has to click. So if you just have one name wrong, everything falls apart. So that's kind of what my job is now. So this is again like how the movement system works in kits. It's following this object in space that we then simulate using physical forces.
The good thing about forces, like on a 2D plane in this case, is that for crowds, like we have it in kits, you can always apply more forces from any direction. It will not change anything about the system. So you don't need to know exactly what happens, and especially when working with interactivity, you just don't know what the player will do. And if you use something like a system where you can just apply forces, it makes it very easy and consistent to work with it. Like in this case, for example, just the characters you touch, they will try to follow the other stream, and you will not have to animate exactly how this works. You can just push them around or into the hole.
So this kit is about to release early next year. It's going to be a mobile and PC and Mac game that takes maybe 15 or 20 minutes to play. It's a very short experience. Our goal is always that we make games you can play on the toilet in one session. Yeah. And there's also a film that we just recently completed. It's like a 9-minute short. That was like from the beginning, the idea to have I wanted to make a short with crowds. So I knew I need to simulate these crowds or I go crazy if I animate them all by myself. And it was then quite clear that if I work with Mario, it would be very interesting to also make it interactive. So we developed it as a short film and as a game simultaneously during the course of the last 4 years, maybe.
And the film is made with the same tools at the end. So we have just scenes that are animated in the same engine, like Unity, what we use for the game, just animated scenes that use the same techniques to do that. So at the end we were very quick to create these scenes because we had this world where we have characters that can do things. They can just make them do these things, and it was really
yeah, it didn't take 3 years, it just took like half a year. So not that quick.
The film was even quicker, no?
Yeah, I think 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's not finished. Yeah, but now we talk about the audience, and that's especially coming from animation. Maybe that's something that is of interest of you. Like, what happens with these kind of interactive things that might come from an animation corner? And this here is my film experience. It's a poem. Yeah. And with games, you release it on these 2 platforms mainly now in our case. And you suddenly don't talk just to an audience, but you talk to customers. So I think Plug and Play we sold for for free, $3, not free. Yeah. So this is then where.
This was under release.
Yeah, that was the release day, I think, on Steam. Yeah, I also had to laugh.
It fits very well on these platforms.
Yeah.
We figured out because first of all we didn't know if you want to put it there because it was a bit complicated at the time, and you have to go through a process to be selected. And then we had the game at the Games Festival where we could get in there for free and without this process. So we thought, why not release it there?
And it's just $2.99. It's not even free. Yeah, and we had a small side project where we collected reviews of our customers. How many people bought it? We don't know really. I mean, we could look it up, but we sold it also on Amazon and Google Play later on, and there's also some bundles where you can sell your game once it's a little bit older. So I don't really know, but I mean we could survive from the sales for a year. Yeah, so that was really great and kind of enabled us to also continue doing our own project at the time. But that took now 4 years, and now we're broke again. So you have to buy your next game.
You get 70% of that.
Yeah, usually yes.
I mean, there are platforms where you get more, but they are smaller. So, but the minimum is 70%.
But please enjoy reviews for Plug and Play now. Oh, there's no sound.
5 stars.
Hilarious, but way too short. It needs to be way longer, but it is so funny I laughed throughout the whole 5 minutes of the game. 3 stars.
Love this game so much. OMG, I laughed so much while playing. I absolutely love this game. 5 stars.
Neutral face. The app itself is fine, but I wasted the money I had on 5 minutes of fun. This has made me regret ever getting this game. 2 stars.
Not a game. Just a collection of random art pieces that aren't very interactive. 1 star.
Lovely and thoughtful. A beautiful work of art, provoking ideas about sexuality and relationships. Note, this isn't a fun game, it's an art piece, and it's best to come at it with no preconceptions of what an app should be. 5 stars. QWERTY. Horse head, water pistol, she'll be all over. 5 stars.
Sorry, I don't get it. Apparently this is a playable version of a short animation by Michael Frei. I guess the meanings are too deep for me to comprehend. Google and watch the video first and then decide for yourself. 1 star.
Okay, yeah. This is, just, 5 stars.
No. 1 star. Too short. It was sick but too short. I kinda feel like I've been ripped off. Thumbs down with dark skin tone. 1 star.
Plug and Play. Amazing artwork, oh dang, I found a jackrabbit.
So these are all real reviews. You can go to this website and actually, if you write a review yourself, you can hear it there.
Yeah, and you can also search for other games or apps and listen to their reviews as well. It's not just exclusively for Plug and Play.
It works with iOS and Steam.
Reviews.
Now what? You guys gonna hook up?
That's sex to them. He about to hit it from the back now. Hold on. It's a double. Wait. That. Oh!
Go.
Oh, there's room for a back door in here. Sweet.
Ah! Oh! Yeah. Oh!
Head. Oh! Right up his bum.
No. Ah!
yeah, and so on. So there were a lot of these. Once we released it on Steam, there were a lot of these YouTube videos of people playing the game, and it's like the most popular genre of videos on YouTube, like people playing games, and like they're actually more like recording their performance playing the game. It's not so much about the games themselves sometimes. They do make more money than we do, probably, yes. I mean, maybe not just with our video, but I think we counted how many, I think like over 100 million, I think so. Over 100 million views of plug and play, let's play videos are just on YouTube, which is crazy.
They're all very good, and they're surprisingly similar.
Yes.
Like they always use, basically after the first of these bit bigger YouTubers who made a video, all of the performances were very similar by the other people. So they reacted at the same moments in the same way. So I think they understood that maybe it worked for somebody. So they copied the reaction.
They just check how they get views and then they do the same thing. And yeah, but it was kind of interesting to observe what happens with the project when it goes online or like more in this game space, because they figured out that the game is out there through Steam. We released it earlier on mobile and nothing happened basically. And this was, of course, like the side effect of this is that like 0.01% of the people who watch these videos then download the game. So yeah, we had a few sales because of these videos, I guess, also. And then when you have a few sales, then you get this kind of emails. And like we actually got quite a lot of them. This is a particularly illogical one, but it's good for showing it at presentations. And we actually asked a friend of ours if he could help us just replying to these emails, because it just got a little bit too much, and sometimes he sends us over conversations he has, and this is one.
This is not a joke, it's real.
Had a happy ending. Yeah, so much about our audience, or about audience you can get by doing something that goes beyond the cinema screen. And yeah, with kids, we also wanted to not just go beyond the cinema screen, but also show the project at other physical spaces. So we decided to show.
Hi.
Okay, that was too quick. Sorry. To show the project. The idea was when it's released, we make kind of a release event, and we have an exhibition of the game and the film and what we have done, and show the process and so on. But the museum gave us like a deadline, of course, because they have to plan the event. So it was not for the release of the project, but more like a preview of the project that we made at the Museum for Digital Art in Zurich. And I'm going to show you a trailer that the museum produced. There are like some logos at the end. We're not affiliated to these companies, but the museum is. And so here you go.
Hi.
Ciao.
was a 1-month exhibition. We showed interactive projection, like where it was tracked how many people are in the projection space, and then the scenes were changed accordingly. Like if you had no one in the projection space, there were no characters on the screen, and when you would enter, they would also enter. And if more people would enter, then even more people would enter until you had a crowd. And when you would go out, it would again like fall apart. And there was also like a preview of the game that you could play on tablets, and we also had like some kind of documentation that also served as a museum guide, where we showed the process. It was a projection, and also some slide viewers where you could like push a button and go through slides that kind of showed our process. These are the logos I was talking about. We also showed it at the church recently. And the church was happy because they like kids. We couldn't get it on our computer, but we found it on our mobile phone. So this was actually at the exhibition at the Museum for Digital Arts. So there were also kids at this exhibition, and the visitors of the museum were given these puppets when entering. So you could actually like play with them and interact with them, and children had a lot of fun with them, like dressing them up and making piles and burying people under them and so on.
Or jumping into the piles.
So it was interesting to see the dynamics play out in real space. Yes, and after Plug and Play, yes, we founded a production company. I mean, originally we just made that because in order to co-produce in Switzerland with Swiss television, for example, you need to be like this limited liability company. So we said, okay, let's do it. We founded a company we call Playables. And that's basically me and Mario working on projects, and our first project will be kids. Also like to kind of exemplify how we work, we will show you now a few of small experimental projects. That's something we do now and then, because we work on kids for quite a long time, and your brain kind of breaks apart, and you get stupid. So we decide sometimes to just take a break for 1 or 2 or 3 days and just make experiments, just have some fun. And these are some of these projects. Quite often they also kind of narrow down what our bigger projects are really about. So this was a website. I think I almost could code it without your help.
But you didn't.
No, I failed.
It was too much.
So it's this website. There's actually a trick. You can just make the window closer and it takes no time.
So in general, it was really about doing small experiments. So we also needed a format that works well, and the web was really, it's the easiest format to work with for things like that. So you don't need to things like that. Because you don't need to export anything, you just upload it and it's there and you can send it to people. And
that's a meditative piece. And this is also a meditative piece, of course, but it was actually a commissioned project, kind of. I was asked by some culture fund in Switzerland to make some drawings for their yearly report. So it was all about the money and how much they spent. And So I made this small project for them where you can just drop in coins into this slot. It's online, just counts up, and it counts like however how many coins are put into the slot all over across the internet. So if you have someone playing somewhere else, the counter just goes up. I think we're now at 2 million or something. And I'm not sure if we disabled it yet, but there was a lot of, or there's still a lot of talk about cryptocurrency. So in the background, your CPU is working for us, making money. And you don't notice it.
No, actually, I took it out because it was blocked everywhere.
Yeah.
After.
I think we made 20 cents.
Yeah. No, it was interesting also about the audience of this, because we just did it as an experiment. We maybe posted it somewhere and that's it. But then for some reason it got picked up, this and the other one with this character you stretch. It got picked up by some websites like
Pointless.com.
Like these big websites where people go when they have nothing to do and want to have some distraction, and there are really a lot of people coming from these websites to this to drop in some coins. It was really a surprising thing that happened.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're almost there. We're Swiss, we're on time. It's not funny. So there's an interactive thing called My Exercise. It's the first game by Atsushi Wada, a Japanese animation artist. And he asked me if I could help him with like the project on the early development phase, and we decided together to help bring this project to the phone and to the computers everywhere, hopefully. And this is also kind of what we try to do, like to help other animation creators to understand like the possibilities you get through working with the new tools that enable interaction, and try to give them tips. And in this case, Atsushi is working with a young Japanese programmer who is not very experienced, and we help them like just provide general feedback, but also we can look into like really technical problems and help out there, and also like all the marketing aspects. It sounds fancy marketing, but it's basically about like preparing all the assets the stores are asking for in the right way. Care about localization, so you have all the game descriptions in the respective languages and all that stuff. It's just a lot of organization that is involved in releasing a game. That's also why it takes a little time. Once you're finished with the game, you cannot just push a button and then it's out there. You need some preparation. And so we try to help them with that. And since we are on board now since quite a time, they felt comfortable enough to release the game under our Playables label, whatever. And we have other projects that are already in the pipeline from other animation filmmakers that do something in this direction. And also, if you have questions or are generally interested in knowing more about this world, then we're happy to talk. And we also, if we see an interesting project, we're happy to help. And yeah, that's, I think, all from us. we're on time, of course, so I stop.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Michael. You stay on the stage because.